What is good stuff, family? It's Ray J back with another video. And in this one, I want to break down what's going on with Tesla, SPY, Nvidia, the QQQ, and a couple of other tickers. I'm going to break down what the news is saying about Tesla, what Jerome Powell said today that's very important, what you should be watching for as we have some interesting technical developments coming out on the charts that are going to be very important for tomorrow. But before I break things down about all this information, before I get into any more details, let me just mention a couple of things real quick. I am personally not a financial planner, so take nothing I say as financial advice. And also, if you guys can, please check out the Webull link, which is down below and in the description. If you sign up for Webull, the link down below, and deposit any amount of money into the account, you are guaranteed up to 12 free stocks. Now, this offer ends in just 12 days, so check it out before they run out. Anyways, let's break down what's going on with Tesla in the markets. Tesla's down 9.3% after that earnings call that Tesla had. Tesla missed on EPS and revenue and showed more and more signs of declines when it came to their profitability and factors like that. But it was also, because of what happened with Elon Musk that caused Tesla to sink the way it did. Now, Musk did say some things that were bearish for Tesla for the short term, but very, very bullish for the long term. So I want to break down just a couple of things about this, how the headlines are kind of like taking this in. Then I'm going to be talking about the share price of Tesla in just a couple of minutes. But first, let's talk about what happened today. We had initial jobless claims that came out in the morning, a little bit lower than expected, which is technically not the best of news for the markets, especially after what Powell just said. And then later on at noon today, we had Jerome Powell speaking, and he gave us a very, very important speech. And then going into tomorrow, I just want to remind you all, we only have two Fed speakers, just some oil data. So there's nothing too big for Friday. But I want to talk about Jerome Powell, what he said that caused some volatility in the markets. So looking at SPY, this is kind of like the epitome of what the market was doing today. We started off very strong. We actually saw the market cool off a bit and started pushing up very, very nicely, holding up and testing the 30 minutes 200 EMA. And we saw this thing going back and forth in the very beginning, thanks to Powell. So you can see the chart right here. It was holding up in the very beginning of the day. And that's because Powell said some things that the market liked. He basically talked about how the Fed is making progress when it comes to inflation. There's a lot of work that has to be done in the future if we can continue to get some like strong economic data. But he initially said some things that the market likes. That's when the market kind of popped in the morning, came down and continued to hold up. But then as time went on, Powell said that even if the Fed does pause, there's no guarantee it's going to remain at these current rates because the Fed may have to continue to raise rates if we continue to get some very hot economic data. If we continue to see strong retail sales, if we see more growth in the job sector, and we don't get like stronger than expected unemployment numbers, the Fed could continue to raise rates, and this ended up leading to the market selling off. He also said some things about how the current economic situation is still showing signs of possible contractions and that the Fed has more work to be done. Then he started to kind of like flip flop from what he said earlier, and that is that inflation is too hot. So he initially said that inflation was cooling down. There was a lot of progress being made. But then he started saying that, the Fed may still have to continue raising rates. So it kind of, caused the market to sell off as time went on. So what the market did in this affected Tesla was we were very volatile in the morning. Then we got a very aggressive sell off during the second half, especially during the final hour. It became very aggressive, and this affected Tesla too. Now, when it comes to economic data, the market is becoming a lot more fearful. We're seeing fear taking over the majority of these market indicators, from looking at the stock price strength index to looking at other indicators from the put and call options and the market volatility. I would say this is more fearful, if anything, because the VIX did end up pushing up. I think this is yet to update, but this is very important to consider. Now, when it comes to other factors, I just wanted to call out that for earnings, we have American Express and just a couple of others. Nothing too big for tomorrow. The headlines are now basically criticizing Elon Musk. They're saying that Tesla tumbles after a disastrous Elon Musk conference call. To some extent, there is truth behind this. I would say that the call was not very organized, and Musk didn't give the best answers to every single question. But at the same time, we have to give Elon Musk credit for saying the truth. The truth is there are going to be hardships coming. The truth is unemployment is going to be going up. The truth is there are high interest rates, and they're going to be affecting Tesla and the EV sector and other stocks in the consumer discretionary sectors. So with that being said, I mean, Musk did say the truth. I do appreciate him for being honest, but I do believe he could have said things differently to maybe help out investors or take a more optimistic view. It's quite obvious that when the Cybertruck, for example, comes out, it's not going to be profitable. It's not going to make Tesla a lot of money starting us off. It's going to be a big operating expense in the beginning. As time goes on, between 12 and 18 months, maybe even longer, depending on different factors, yes, it's going to become profitable for sure. But Elon Musk, I just think that he took some negative views, even if he was telling the truth. There were different ways he could have gone about some of the things that he said. But there were even talks about the Mexico plant or the Mexico Gigafactory potentially being put on pause. And he did talk a little bit too much about the macroeconomic environment, in my opinion. I think he should have talked more about Tesla and their game plan to overcome these challenges. And that could have been more optimistic for investors. But hey, I mean, I'm not really going to, shed too much negative light on Elon Musk because, he still said the truth. Okay. Even though I think he could have handled a lot of the questions a lot better. I think he could have been more prepared. I think that he could have done things differently. Yes, but he still said the truth. And I do appreciate him for that. Anyways, but what he said was quite bearish for the short term. Very bullish for the long term, but we have to consider both sides. Anyways, going back to volume, we had 169 million above average volume as Tesla sold off quite aggressively. This was not just like shorts, it was also like a lot of investors selling off Tesla to a large extent. Piper Sandler came out and gave Tesla an overweight rating. Wedbush is still saying that Tesla's going to outperform the markets, but other big banks and companies, they did cut their price targets on Tesla. I think it was Citigroup and also Wedbush that did that. So I will talk more about that later on, maybe like tomorrow or something. But for now, price price ratio is dropping. Tesla's losing some relative strength. Tesla's losing more and more strength as time goes on. When it comes to daily seasonality, Tesla tends to be green only about 48.9% of the time on Fridays. So it is kind of like a coin flip, but nothing too crazy. There tends to be more volatility during the second hour of the day or 11 o'clock a.m. Eastern time, and also around 2 p.m. That's when we tend to see Tesla make big moves historically. And on top of this, October does tend to be a weak month. We tend to be green only 43% of the time on average. So Tesla does tend to be weak during this time historically. And we're going to be watched to see what happens going into November, as Tesla tends to do better historically. But things are going to be very dependent on other factors. Anyways, now I want to break down the charts and talk about some very important things. So to be frank with you guys, Tesla looks weak right now. It's been selling off quite aggressively. If you look at Tesla's share price right here, let me just pull up some important technicals. I have Tesla right here on the daily chart. Okay, we have a quite bearish looking daily candle. It's not really a bearish engulfing candle, but still is quite bearish. The 4-hour time frame is also looking very bearish on the PPO, and there's no sign of a true bounce on Tesla. It basically sold off at the very end, came up just a tiny bit, but it still looked very weak. So the question is, where is Tesla going to go? The 4-hour time frame tells us that 212 is going to be a very important support on Tesla. There's also going to be other supports at other regions. We also have that unfilled gap, which can take Tesla down towards 215. So I believe Tesla will fill the gap very soon. And I believe there's more downside coming. So we're going to be watching these levels. In the morning tomorrow, look for a little rebound in the morning. But when you look at SPY and the QQQ, those are looking quite bearish. So I think it's going to be bad, at least for the bulls. Tesla could get a backtest of 220, maybe chop around here, and then we might see a big rejection. I'm predicting we're going to see a little bit more downside. I think Tesla may fail at 217 and then start sinking towards 215. And if we lose that, I think 212 is going to be a very important level. That's where we have historical support. But if we lose that, we could see Tesla sink towards 210. So I do anticipate that there is likely and possibly more downside coming. I think that we have to watch these supports just for confirmation, but I do believe we're going to likely see Tesla continue to sell off. So watch for a little pop on Tesla, watch it chop around this 220 area, then look for a rejection up here for even more downside. If we lose 216.8, the low from today, if we lose that, I expect even more selling. I expect Tesla to get all the way down to 215, if not 212. And we could even break below that, but 212 is where we have some strong support. So we're going to be watching to see if that holds. If it fails on us, then 209 is a possibility. Not to mention 205, but I'm not too worried about those yet. Let's just watch for 212 first. Now, I also want to call out that SPY looks very bearish too, because when I pull up SPY on the daily chart, we have a bearish engulfing candle. We also have a potential negative PPO crossover on the MACD. RSI is looking a little weak. We also are approaching our 200 EMA on the daily, which happens to be around 423.64, which I believe SPY is going to be testing. So look for a little back test of 426 or so. Could go a little higher and then watch this thing start selling off for 425. If we lose 425, I expect 423.6 to be coming. If we lose that, then we could get very close to like 422, not to mention 420 below that. But 423.6 is going to be a strong support to watch for at the 200 EMA, because this is where our EMA happens to be in our support. So we're going to be watching that. This could be forming an inverse head and shoulders if we do bounce off 423, but for now, there's no signal just yet. So watch 423. I think it's going to be tested tomorrow. For the QQQ, it's the same thing basically. The QQQ looks more bearish. I mean, we did close below 316. We're actually selling off a bit more in the after hours. So I believe we're going to be watching 358. If the QQQ loses that, it's going to come all the way down towards 355. If we lose that, watch 353.5, 352.5, then 350 as support. For resistance, you're going to be watching 360 and then 361.69. I predict we're going to see this thing pop a little bit and then start selling off towards 358. And if we lose it, 355 could be on the table for the triple Q going into tomorrow. We have a potential head and shoulders like structure that can bring it all the way down towards 353. So technicals look more bearish for the QQQ overall. For something else such as, I'm going to also be looking at Nvda. This is also looking a bit more bearish because we ended up breaking down from our megaphone patterns like right here. And you could see right here, there could be like an attempt for it to rebound, but in order to turn bullish, you want to see it break and hold 425. If it manages to hold that, there is going to be a potential for it to try to make its way back up. But my gut tells me it's going to fail. It's going to like get very close to 425, then reject and start sinking again. If we lose this very, very key support at 417, I expect 415 to be tested, followed by a big drop towards this range right here. We have this unfilled gap towards 409, not to mention key support at 407 to 409. So I believe Nvidia could be approaching this zone right here, this 407 to 409 area. That's where we might see Nvidia end up basically seeing some buyers step in. So I do anticipate some more downside. I could see this thing dropping lower. For confirmation of this break, watch it break the low of the day. If it breaks below 415, we're going to see this thing sink lower. And watch for a little back test in the beginning at 425 before rejection, and I do anticipate more downside. Apple's also looking a bit more bearish with a head and shoulders like pattern. So you can see it right here. This is what Apple's looking like with the head and shoulders. If we lose 176 flat, I mean, if we end up 175 flat, excuse me, guys. If we lose 175, what I predict could happen is we could see this thing just kind of like pop a little bit, then reject, and then come all the way back down towards 173.8. If we lose that, I expect this thing to come down towards 172.6. It all depends on if we hold or not, but I do anticipate some downside. I think it's going to get very close to the very low 174s at the very least, and I think it's going to continue to downtrend. That's the most likely move. Don't forget to watch 176 as resistance, and we will see what Apple does from there. But that's pretty much it for the majority of tickers. I am anticipating some downside for Tesla, guys. It does not look like it's done selling off just yet. But buyers should try to defend 212. If that fails, though, it could always drop lower. But I do anticipate some buyers will try to fight around there. Now, let me just go over a couple of others real quick. I'm going to try to be very quick with this part. For SoFi, watch 7.4 as support if we lose the 200 EMA. Then watch 7.14 if we continue selling, which I think the odds favor as we have a bearish cross in the daily PPO. So SoFi looks more bearish. The IWM looks more bearish. We have 167.5 as support, followed by 166.2. Watch those supports very carefully. I believe it's going to be testing one of those, and I think there's more downside coming for it. Looking at this bearish structure on the daily chart. Looking at Microsoft, it looks a bit more bearish on the daily. Because we got this rejection right here, we got a very bearish looking daily candle. I could see it coming down towards 328 by tomorrow. For something else such as Netflix, Netflix kind of like popped very nicely, but we could see a rejection. I could see this thing retrace just a bit. It depends on if we hold 400. If we lose 400, expect 392. If we hold it, it could shop around there for the time being. For AMD, this is looking a bit more bearish. I'm going to be watching for a 101.5. If we lose that, watch 100.66 or the daily 200 EMA. I believe it's going to be testing 100.66 very, very soon. For Ford, it looks a bit more bearish. If this thing loses this key support at 11.5, I'm going to be expecting it to come down to this level right here. 11.12 is going to be a key support, followed by 10.86. So I believe that if we lose 11.5, we're going to be hitting the very low 11s, and that's where we have some key support. For the VIX, it's looking bullish on the daily, which is another bearish signal. It has a very bullish looking daily candle, which suggests that the market may sink more tomorrow, causing the VIX to go up higher again. That's what this is favoring. Same thing with the SQQQ, looking a bit more bearish on the daily. We're about to get a bullish cross on the bullish on the daily as we're about to get a bullish cross on the PPO. The dollar is looking A little bit more bullish with a possible inverse head and shoulders here. So we want to see if the dollar could bounce and break above 106.6. If it achieves that, we could see it push for the 107s, looking more bullish. For Coinbase, we're going to be watching this support right over here. Do we hold this 73 area? My guts tells me 72 is going to be tested. And if we lose that, watch 70.4 as it looks a bit more bearish. For Google, it's also looking a little bit more bearish. I'm going to be watching 137.72 as support. I think it's going to test that for tomorrow. A bearish signal for the stock market would be the 10-year Treasury yield, which is continuing to soar alongside crude oil. Crude oil is soaring because of the war that's going on as it's expanding to other countries. But for the 10-year Treasury yield, as these yields are going up, if this breaks 50, it's going to be another bearish signal. The daily chart is still looking more bullish for this, which is bearish for the stock market. Amazon looks like it's going to be, it has like a potential head and shoulders like structure. If it ends up breaking this support at 128, watch 127.5. If we lose that, I expect it to come all the way down towards 126. If we lose 126, watch 125 flat, which is where we have this wick right here, and 123.19. I think it's going to come all the way down to 126 very soon. I think I'm leaning in that direction, and that's what looks very probable on the chart. So I think it was either the daily, actually not the daily. I think the daily on Meta looks more bearish. So it looks like it's going to sink lower looking at the PPO. So Meta looks bearish, but the most important chart I think is the 4-hour because we have this structure right here. We're going to be watching our 200 EMA at 307.5. If we lose it, watch 305 as key support, not to mention 302. 301.5, sorry, just to be more precise. So I believe it's going to be testing 305.7 tomorrow. It looks more bearish. And if that breaks, there's going to be even more downside. If it holds it, it could try to chop around here. So guys, most stocks are looking bearish. It's just plain and simple. It's just my honest opinion, my honest assessment of the markets. Tesla could have more downside. There's no sign of it bouncing yet. So right now, watch these levels and just know that, things like this happen. We are entering a recessionary environment. There were bearish things that came out for Tesla's earnings, but the long term is still very bright. I also believe Tesla is going to bounce in the future. May not happen tomorrow, but going into the next couple of weeks, I think it's going to bottom, and eventually we're going to see more buyers stepping in. I think Wall Street and institutions will be buying the dips. So I believe that on Tesla, but we're going to see what happens as time goes on. Anyways, that's it for the video. Thank you all so much for listening. I'll see you guys tomorrow morning for the first video of the day. Thank you again, and peace out.